everyone. Welcome to our next episode of this podcast. I am joined this morning by Amanda from Northern Value Creators, and today we're going to be talking all about communication, communicating with your customers and how to get it right. So, welcome, Amanda. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm really good and excited to be sharing all of my communication tips with everybody.
Yeah, excellent. What part of the world are you in today?
I am in the Peak District and it is kind of sunny. It's not raining.
Nice,
I
nice,
had a really nice dog walk this morning and didn't get rained on, so that's a bonus, I think.
excellent. What make and model of dog have you got?
I have got a crazy Vizsla.
Ah, nice. Do you use a pet groomer?
No, Visslers have no undercoat, are very short haired, and don't need it. But I did have a Labradoodle before who was
Yeah.
like a big woolly black bear, and he needed grooming. And I have lots of dog grooming stories I can weave into our communication conversation today because I think Pip was possibly every groomer's worst nightmare.
Oh, well, it kind of goes sometimes with the Labradoodle breed. And to be fair, I was only talking to a client this morning about some red flags, and one of them was the fact that it was a golden doodle. But yeah, they
Yeah.
can need a lot of work, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And he loved that fresh haircut feel, but absolutely hated being groomed. So he was so bad that one of the companies that we went to have him groomed told us that they were closing down and could no longer work with him. And it was a lie. They just didn't want us to come back, but didn't have the confidence to say that he was just too much for them.
Wow, I mean that was a fantastic story because that ties right in with actually why you're here doing this podcast, isn't it? About communication with customers.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your business and how you help people with your business.
So I am a professional coach. I started off in as a teacher and then a trainer and then moved into coaching. And the main client base that I work with are technical experts. So they can be anything from accountants, technologists to people delivering a service where their expertise is what people are buying into. But what I find with my clients and what I do is you might be the very best at what you do. So you could be the best in class dog groomer in the whole wide world. But if you are no good with people, then your business isn't going to go very far. So that's where I kind of come in and where I work with people is then helping them be as confident with that people side of things as they are with their area of technical expertise.
I like that. I wonder if there's people listening actually that think of themselves as technical experts. You know, we call ourselves like qualified dog groomers and a pet groomer and stuff like that. But it's a bit like when I ask my audience, do you feel like you're entrepreneur or entrepreneurial? Quite a lot of them sort of say, no, I don't really see that, but they are because they're running a business in the seek of profit. But technical experts is a new one to add to that list.
Well, they are definitely technical experts. I mean, if you gave me a Labradoodle to groom, I would make such a fist of it. It would be awful. And I would be in an absolute panic. I wouldn't know where to start. I'm not even comfortable kind of just trimming the nails on all of the small animals in our house. I get
Mm.
someone else to do that. There's definitely expertise there.
Is there like a definition of technical expert then? Is it someone that's qualified or gone away and done some training? I suppose anyone that's done more training than someone else becomes a technical expert. Would they say if read one book more than you, then I know more about that topic kind
Well,
of?
I think if you I think if you've read one book, as much as you'd like to call yourself a technical expert, I think that's pushing it a little bit far. But if you've got specialist qualifications and you've got specialist skills, of course you're a technical expert.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that is true for dog groomers, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And like you said, I can go into our salon tomorrow, and although my wife Emma says I could, but I don't feel I don't have the confidence to go in there and pick up the clippers and mow off a cockapoo or a labradoodle.
I
Like,
wouldn't know where to start. And I've been working with a couple of dog groomers, and There are specialist looks for particular breeds. There are specialist techniques for particular breeds. Then you've got what you do for showing as opposed to kind of family dogs. So there's loads and loads of expertise there. So you're definitely a technical expertise. And I think one of the things that creates a barrier or creates a communication distance and problem when it comes to technical experts working with others, working with customers, is not explaining your process.
Mm, yeah.
So, quite often, because you think, oh, little old me, it's nothing what I do. Anyone could do it. You don't realize that people need to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's involved, why it takes so long, why you might need, if you think about dog grooming. So Pip was this enormous, he was like a small bear, um, really hairy, hated being brushed. I mean, didn't mind his body, but like his legs, his face, oh my God, it was an absolute nightmare. So we then got lots of explanations, lots of understanding about the fact that he needed to be washed, he needed his undercoat brushing out, he needed to have the hair around his face, if it was too matted, cut really short because there was nothing else that could be done. So we knew Pip was difficult, but we were very happy because we had the process explained to us. So we knew it could take half a day. We knew why things were being done and why it was costing how much it was. And also, we had one groomer. This is after the company said they'd closed and they hadn't. So the new groomer we went to, she had what she referred to as her um, extra time, what did she call it? She was like an extra time charge, but
Yeah.
essentially, I think it was her shit tax. And so this is if you have a dog that's really difficult, then you add on like a
Yeah.
little bit extra. So we had this, I think lovingly, it was a shit tax because the dog was so difficult that she added on. But again, we understood that. We understood why he was more expensive with her, because the process was explained. So I think part and parcel of this connected conversation and working well as an expert is realizing that other people don't know your process, don't know why you're doing it. And if you explain it, then that makes people feel more connected and more comfortable with you.
Yeah, and I think this is really so. I didn't know that you had this bear of a Labradoodle before we started the conversation, and how you can relate so well to being on the both sides of the fence, the customer, but also the coach around communication and stuff. And I really love that you can see both sides of the story because I think there's a real frustration within pet groomers where take your Labradoodle and it comes in every 10, 12 weeks and the groomer feels like they're saying to the customer, look, we're gonna have to shave your dog down and again, and you're not brushing it and you're not bringing it enough. And then 10 weeks go by and I'm like, Jesus, I said, we've got to take this short again. This person's not listening. But I suppose as the pet groomer, sometimes we feel that it's the customer's fault for not, they can't be bothered, they don't care about their dog, they can't be asked, they just want to pay for our services. But actually, can it come back down to us and the way that we're communicating with that customer? And like you said, explaining not you have to come every 6 to 8 weeks, but actually saying why you have to come every 6 to 8 weeks. And my wife would say, I've explained to customers till I'm blue in the face, and I'm sure there's some that actually just ignore it. But maybe we need to change up how we communicate with our customers to make sure we're getting the message home.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And what was going through my mind there were a couple of things about the neuroscience of conversations. So if you are communicating with someone and you are thinking, this person is an idiot, this person doesn't care about their dog, this person is behaving in this way just to annoy me, the way that you come at that conversation will create disconnect. So I was really lucky, she's no longer with us, to study with an American specialist in the neuroscience of conversation. And this is going back, I was looking at I've got my certificate over here. I'm still so proud of it. Got it in 2016. So it's a few years ago. And it was just when people were beginning to get into brain science and really understand what happens. So every time you communicate with somebody, You are either elevating oxytocin, which is that feel good connecting neurochemical, or you are elevating cortisol, which is that I hate you, I don't trust you, I don't like you chemical. So you've got these two things constantly going on. And if you think about that phrase, we'll have to clip it short. Yeah. Now you can say that in a way that is really kind, really thoughtful. I know it's really tricky. This is really common with Labradoodles. Awfully sorry, but we're going to have to clip this short. Versus, we're going to have to clip this short. Yeah, they're the same words, really different energy. And
Mm.
so, how your clients respond to you is, and this is going to be like, no, don't tell me this, Amanda, but it is all about the energy that you bring into the conversation. So if you can take a breath, get yourself in a calm state, see your worst client, the worst dog that you've got to deal with, see them as a friend. Treat them as somebody who you think really cares about their animal and is doing their best. Then you'll go at the conversation with an entirely different energy. You'll elevate that oxytocin where there's more trust, more discovery. So if you think about it, going back to you were saying, weren't you? Oh, I keep saying to my clients, you need to bring your dog more often, you need to do this, you need to do that. If you had a conversation that was based in discovery, that you were having with a friend who you loved and you trusted and you thought was really capable, and it was, gosh, these Labradoodles, they are such hard work, aren't they? Such hard work to look after. How do you manage with all of the brushing and grooming that's involved in between sessions, Amanda? Oh, I would say it's really difficult because Pip will eat the brush if I go anywhere near his face. He will run away and hide under the furniture, and I can't get him out because he's so big. Um, okay, so have you tried this? Have you tried that? So you're then in a space of discovery rather than thinking, oh my gosh, not this woman again. And that awful Labradoodle. He's just going to bark at me constantly. So key is to think about how are you communicating? What energy are you bringing into the conversation? Because if you're coming in irritated, your client will pick that up.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we think, nobody knows how I feel. I think this person is really annoying, but I'm hiding it. And actually, the way you hide it is by having tense shoulders, tight lips, and talking like this. And it's obvious what you're thinking.
I think there actually, I was going to say there's by asking those questions, you're building that empathy, aren't you? Because you're gaining that they're open questions, and you're gaining that understanding. So that customer's gone from, oh, Amanda just doesn't bother brushing the dog. She must take a spoon to it between grooms, and she can't be bothered. Doesn't really like know. Doesn't understand what Labradoodles are about. But actually, um, by asking those questions, those preconceived ideas that, we perhaps have because we're busy and you might have been the third Labradoodle of the day that's been completely matted, and you've got all those barriers up. You're burning out like mentally because you're dealing with this all the time and they're big and strong and they hurt your arms and they pull you across the table, all that kind of stuff. But by asking you questions about, well, tell me how you brush your dog at home, you're now building up that mental picture in your head saying, oh, actually, Amanda's having real problems with this. Amanda, like Pip's not happy having their muzzle brushed. Well, they'd never do. They don't like having their muzzles brushed. And I know how to hold that dog properly and get that done. So you're actually building that internal empathy with the customer and that understanding, which then, I suppose, like you said, must lower the cortisol, the stress levels, and go, oh, actually,
Exactly. Well, you're in a space of discovery. And actually, there, nobody's ever told me how to hold the dog so I can brush their muzzle. And
trademark.
nobody's ever said to me, no dog on the planet, Amanda, likes their muzzle brushing. This is what to do. So I've just assumed, because again, I'm not an expert, that my dog hated having his muzzle brushed, and all these other dogs must love it. And that's why, I get their face because
Yeah.
I'm doing something wrong with my dog.
And as a customer, did you feel like you were being told off kind of
Oh
thing?
my gosh, yeah. There was one lady who was possibly the best in terms of how Pip looked at the end of the groom. But I absolutely loathed going to see her. And in the end, we just moved. to another groomer because she fancied herself as a pet psychologist. So she wasn't qualified, but she was interested and a dabbler. And she would constantly be telling me about how my dog didn't know it was a dog and how I should be this and how I should be that with him. But we got Pip before we adopted our children, so he was our first baby, and I didn't want him to be an outside, well-behaved, I'll whistle and you'll do this kind of dog. I wanted him to be my pet. I mean, he was enormous. He weighed an absolute ton, would sit on my lap when
Mm.
he wanted me to take him out for a walk so I couldn't see the TV. He was just such a lovely dog, and I absolutely adored him. And we've got endless stories. When I watched Marley and Me, I thought, well, Pip was even worse than that. So I just adored him. And she was horrible. It felt to me like it was constant judgment and shame. And she was trying to make me feel bad so that I would then take action. But actually, the action I took was I left.
Well, I think this is a fantastic point, and I'm sure if that pet groomer listens to this, or I'm pretty sure, knowing pet groomers quite well, that she had no intention whatsoever to make you feel bad or like schooled or spoken down to. But I think that's a fantastic point that you raised, because many people, many pet groomers think that their business evolves around the haircut, the final product. And what you've just said there was, you received an amazing haircut, the best haircut that Pip had ever had. But the turn off from the business, what turned you away from that business was the communication style and
Mm.
how you were spoken to as a customer. And I bang on, like people say to me, like, how can I there's 100,000 dog groomers around me. There's loads of competition. How can I stand out as a pet groomer? And I kind of say to them, well, the haircut is just one small part of your business, but customer service value is like an amazing part of your business that you can hone in on and help you stand out amongst all the others. And you've
And I think it's how
demonstrated
you,
that.
how the person makes you feel. So the dog groomer that we had the longest was a lady that would rock up to the house in a scratchy car with a table. So I would have to help lift the dog onto the table with her because it was just so big. I'd hang around and then feed the dog bits of treats as she was doing it. And it was all, very basic, very rough and ready, and it would be a bit of a buzz cut. But she had such a lovely rapport and she treated me like a friend. And it wasn't the best haircut, still cost the same as the other ones, but she treated me really well. So I think when you think about customer service, I think sometimes you've got in your head, like in hotels, the chocolates on the pillow and all that sort of stuff. It's not about that. It's about the way that you make your customers feel. And one of the things that I've learned as a coach is that how you talk to people is really important and you need to match other people's energy.
Mm.
So if you've got a customer who is very quiet and slow and talks like this, then if you're all la, 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 then you're not going to feel like me because our brain is constantly looking and judging, is this person like me? Are they my crew or not my crew? Are we in or are we out? And so it's also paying attention, not only because I think dog groomers are brilliant at this when it comes to animals, and it's just applying that same understanding to the human and just getting a sense of how do they communicate? Yeah, how can I mirror the way that they are and their energy so that I can feel more like them and be more comfortable with them? And how can I be curious and stay in that space of discovery so I really understand what's going on for them around the dog?
So I like that word, space of discovery. So it's building that understanding with the customer. And I suppose if we start setting our stall out how we want to go on,
Hmm.
the new if we learn to communicate better with our customers, the new people that we welcome into our business, we're going to start having better experiences with, aren't we?
You can
And
do it straight away
yeah.
because one of the conversations that I encourage people to use is, grooming your dog is really important to me. I want you to have a great experience. What can I do to make this a 10 out of 10 experience for you? To start tomorrow. And they would say, oh, I don't know, I've never thought about it. Everything is brilliant. Or they might say, oh, it would be helpful if I could have Tuesdays. Like, who knows what they're going to say? And then you can say, oh, well, that's brilliant because I could do that for you. And what would really help me is if, and then if a 10 out of 10 for you is, for example, clients bring their diaries so you can book them
Mm.
on the day for the next session. Or if clients don't come into the yard before the other client's gone, or if they arrive on time, or whatever it is, you can start to create this shared understanding of what good looks like for the both of you, because people will do things not to piss you off, but because they didn't know they weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we keep that position of leadership with our clients because I think that's really important, and I feel that people do want to be led. So, like you said, like people turn up early, and this is a big bugbear for the industry where they've got one dog on the table, and then the next customer rocks up 15 minutes early, or the dog owner. The owner of the dog on the table rocks up 15 minutes early, and it's like, I haven't told you that your dog's ready. Why are you marching through the door and winding your dog up, sort of thing. So,
Mm.
and again, I often feel that the blame is pushed out, and the blame is pushed out to the customer and the fact that they've turned up early, and I told them not to come here, and I told them not to do this. I said I'd text them, when they're ready and stuff like that. I saw one yesterday. It's like um, the customer was happy to leave their dog at their kennels for a week, but they weren't happy to leave it at the groomers for an hour and a half, and they had to come back and check. You know, so, but if we had start adjusting and learning and understanding this, then we can use better communication to sort that.
Well, I think it's setting out expectations, isn't it?
Mm.
So if you think about when you go to hospital, you are told um, what time to arrive, what to wear, whether you eat or not beforehand, what to expect, and you're stepped. All of this is going back to you're stepped all the way through the process, so you understand what's happening. And by doing that, it helps people feel safe and they know what they need to do and what's going to happen next and what to expect. And as a dog groomer, you need to help your human as much as the dog feel safe within the process. So just make it really clear about bring your dog at this time, you'll collect them at this time, you can't come beforehand because they won't be ready. Or if you've got a dog where they they might take longer,
Mhm.
I'm going to text you when they're ready and you can come after that. So you explain all of these things. People are forgetful. So you
Mm.
might have told them the first time, they forget the third time. So have it written down. Here we go. This is the way I work. So it's really,
Yeah.
really clear. And the other thing is that if you say, for example, I'll have your dog for an hour and a half, so your dog will be ready at N o'clock. And for whatever reason, the person came and can I come early? And you say yes, or knock, 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 can I come in? And you say yes. Then basically, that rule that you've given is no longer valid because
Mm.
people don't follow your written rules, they follow what you do. So if you are somebody that doesn't have very clear boundaries, and you can have kind boundaries, yeah, to manage the groom, to make sure the dog is relaxed, to make sure that I get everything done and everything runs really smoothly. This is how we work. These are kind boundaries. If you renege on your own boundaries, then the client's not going to know that and they're just going to turn up early. So for my husband and I, he thinks on time is 15 minutes early. I think on time is 2 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I will deliberately look and wait until it's gone past the time because I think no one's ever ready on the dot. And that little extra bit is really helpful. Whereas he will always rock up early,
Yeah.
which drives me nutty because I can just imagine the chaos that I would have if somebody turned up early to my house. So you just need to have these really clear boundaries and say, if you, I don't know, whatever you're doing or whatever with traffic, if you end up early, you'll just need to sit in the car.
Yeah, and I think I like that. And again, it's explaining it, isn't it? And I was thinking, whilst you were explaining that, I was thinking about the boundaries around, many again pet groomers are busy during the day and they don't get to do the inquiries, and sometimes they reply to messages and phone calls at like 8 o'clock at night, and then again, if we're replying to phone calls and messages at 8 o'clock at night, we're giving the customers that permission to message you at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night as well.
I think it's worse than that. You've told that customer, you've taught them the best time to communicate with me
Mm.
is 8 o'clock at night
Yeah.
because that's when they do it. I've got there's a new nail groomers in a nail bar in the village, and I really want to go, and um, and I don't know how to book with this lady, so she's trained me to message her on Messenger, which is really ineffective. So I'm like really keen to go. I've not been. I'll probably go somewhere else because she's not made it really clear. How do you book an appointment? There's nothing. There's
Mm.
no piece of information anywhere I can see that explains how to make an appointment. The only thing I can see is message me on Messenger because she's got a Facebook page.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I think a lot of business owners do this in the fact that they put this stuff out there thinking, well, I'm on Facebook, everyone knows how to get hold of me. But what they don't do is flip the table, and I try and encourage people to do this and pretend to be the customer and say,
Okay.
right, I'm going to be the customer. I'm going to go and try and find the business. And then once I've found the business, I'm going to go and try and communicate the business and then see how far or how frustrated I get before I give up and then move on to the next one. It's quite a nice exercise, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, when you're pretending to be the customer, quite often we pretend to be yourself being
Hmm.
the customer, and everything you've designed works brilliantly for your own brain.
Yeah.
But human beings have got the most amazing brains that work in the most unusual ways. So it's also, I think, being really transparent, being really clear, and kindly communicating about what you want is helpful because for some people's brains, they just won't understand what you do and why you do it. And they need that kind of understanding and that outline.
Yeah, and I suppose we can do that with social media, blog posts, and our websites, like how to book an appointment with us.
Yeah,
Very simple title, isn't it? How to book an
yeah.
appointment with us.
And some clients then as well. So if we think about this neuroscience of conversation and this cortisol and this stress, because Pip was naughty and difficult and barky and hard work and matted and involved lots of work, and I had a grooming company tell me they'd closed rather than tell me the truth that they didn't want to see him, I would be very stressed when I took Pip to the groomers. So I would be flustered, a bit clipped. I probably wasn't listening very well
Hmm.
because I'm so kind of like stressed and anxious. And is the dog going to behave? And is this groomer going to hate them? And like he came out from one groom where he had these these bits of fur, these enormous plumes of fur everywhere. And the woman was just absolutely scarlet and sweating, where she'd obviously had the worst time ever. So I was really, really anxious. So actually having things that are written down, managing other people's emotions is all right. I'm going to look after your dog. You don't need to worry. All you need to do is arrive at X o'clock and have your diary with you to book the next session. Nice, calm voice, calming me down. Perfect. Good. I'm in safe hands. Because I think it's easy when we're experts to be focused in on the expert thing. And I would imagine that a lot of the people listening, if you could just have the dogs without the customers, wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh, I think that's the ideal career for many people that have gone into dog grooming. Many of them have worked with the public, and hence why they want to work with animals.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, running a business, the animals don't get their wallets out and pay you, and
Yeah.
the animals don't pick up the phone and phone you to put themselves in. Every animal comes with an owner, and they're the ones that we've got to really master, I suppose, have the technical expertise around is actually working with the owners as just as much as working with the animals.
And do a bit of training, person training. So
Mm.
this is the time we arrive. This is the time you'll get your dog. The door is shut. We won't open the door until it's the time. So it's really, really clear. And just the thing, if people are mindful, every time they do something that breaks their own rules, they are telling the customer that that is actually the rule. You know, my customer keeps coming earlier and earlier and earlier for their dog. Will you keep letting them in?
Yeah, you keep allowing them. And okay, maybe we can have a little bit of a journey. So, perhaps we can look at how you do this with a brand new customer, and how we can change our practices today. Like, how do we deal with a brand new customer that comes into our business? How can we build that rapport with them?
So I would start one with orientating them about your business, so helping them understand your process, how you work, what you do, what's expected. It'd be amazing to have something written down because then the person can take it away so they've got it. It would be staying in that space of discovery. So really asking those open questions about what are you looking for, what do you want, and also using empathetic listening. So if somebody says, I want the dog cut short. You say, okay, so I've heard you say, I want the dog cut short. What does that mean for you? Is short like this, or like this? So they can like just be really, really clear to create that shared understanding.
Yeah,
And you
and
can also say things like, so I do it as a coach, I will say, sort of in the mid to end point, is there, if there's anything I've done that you don't understand or that's difficult or that I could do better, just let me know. So you're inviting that feedback. And I think people are often afraid to have feedback because they're worried that people are going to say, oh my God, they're going to say I'm awful or I'm rubbish. But actually, it's an opportunity to build that shared understanding and that shared clarity and that sort of safe container where you're human can feel safe working with you with their dog because a lot of people will be really worried that the groomer will be judging them and will be thinking that they're a rubbish pet owner, they're not doing it right. And so being in that safe space where you can ask questions, discover things together. And I think if people can imagine then me with Pip, I adored that dog. I'm so sad he's not with us anymore. There were loads of things that I didn't do because I didn't know how.
mm,
I think as well, when we went for puppy training, we went to a lady who specialised in gun dogs, and she was very strict. And we decided that we were going to rebel and not do that. So we probably didn't get the best start with Pip. Plus, he was our surrogate baby. So he really was more of a hairy human than a dog. So there were
you,
lots of things I just didn't know. So
yeah,
just imagine lovely, slightly confused Amanda doesn't know. And so if you don't kindly share, I'll never know what to do.
you're a proper red flag customer, you were.
Yeah, no, properly. I was the worst nightmare. And we had Pip for 15 years and we must have been through 8 groomers.
And did any of those, so opening up with questions, having some kind of brochure that to take away is your process, like how you work, when pickup is, and this is what I love about the grooming industry in a way is that every business is different. So some people will text their customers, some people will give them an ETA, some people will phone them. There's no right and wrong. And I always say this to my clients, there's no right and wrong in business, but just decide how you want to do something and like you said, stick to it.
Yeah, stick to it.
Don't
Absolutely.
deviate from the rules because you confuse your customers, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, so opening questions, we actually offer a puppy package, which I feel might have really helped you with Pip in the fact that, the first session is just sitting down with the pet owner and discussing the breed and
Mm.
what's required from the owner when it comes to the grooming with that particular breed. If it's a Labrador, well, a Vizsla, it can come in for a bath, it can come in for a de-shed and a teeth clean and stuff like that. This is what we can offer for your breed. But again, if it's a Cockapoo Labradoodle, well, we've got some equipment to give you,
Yeah.
brush
Yeah.
combs
And we
and
bought all the gear, I
yeah,
was always, in a sense, a really great customer because we had big pockets, we'd always buy all the gear, the special shampoo and all the rest of it. We just had a dog that was very non-compliant and no idea how to kind of hold, restrain, and do things. He'd just
yeah.
be off.
So I think this leads into another part of the conversation. Communication style is, I think a lot of pet groomers are people pleasers. We're in the service industry. I'd recognize myself as a people pleaser as well. And saying no to people, telling the truth,
Mm,
can be very difficult. So when Amanda's standing there with Pip and saying, oh, I just would like a nice haircut, don't want him too short, and the groomer sort of looks and go, yeah, you've brushed the top centimetre of the coat, but underneath it's a carpet. Some groomers will shy away from talking about that and they'll just agree and say yes. but this is really counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You need to be really honest. And actually, I loved working with groomers who were super honest, and were saying, this is really mattered, or you've done this bit really well, but you've missed this bit here. And we often liked to have him cut really, really short, like super, super short, because he would just be so bouncy and so free, and he loved swimming. So
Mm.
he'd get really gunky and really stinky. So he just loved to be cut short. And so sometimes I'd be saying, well, I'd like it really, really short. And I'd have a groomer say, oh no, Labradoodles should look like this. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be blow drying a big fluff ball. And he's not that kind of dog. He likes to roll in poop, um, swim in rivers, you know, find a dead thing and wriggle all over it. He doesn't want to have, a boofy haircut. No, thank you.
I want to towel dry him when he comes out the river. He's going to get wet, it's going to get dry, going to towel dry, he's going to get matted. Let's face it.
Exactly, exactly. So we liked him really, really short, and he loved being really, really short. And there needs to be that honesty there, where sometimes groomers would try and do things to please us because they thought that was right, but actually we kind of knew he was. By the time we got to 7, we knew he was a pretty tricky dog,
Hmm.
and we didn't need all of that. And I think it helped educate us about what he needed, and it's a two-way relationship, isn't it? And I think
So,
whenever there's dishonesty,
hmm.
or something not being said, again, we pick up on that, we can sense it. And as human beings, we think everything is about us. So if something's not been said, we will feel, oh, this groomer doesn't like me, or they're judging me, or they think there's something bad about me. Whereas they might be like, oh my God, how am I going to do blah, 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 when it's so difficult? I've said yes, I've said I'm going to do it in this amount of time, but I'm going to need a lot longer. And the standard charge I told Amanda isn't going to cover the amount of time. And all of this is going on inside. And all I'm seeing is a face, and thinking, God, they hate me. They hate the dog. Well,
Yeah, no,
just be
yeah.
honest. Just say what's needed.
And I think from the groomer's point of view, they're quite fearful that if they tell the truth and say the dog is very difficult, or the dog was very matted, or if they say, some of them may not have the skill to actually be able to accomplish or finish what was actually needed. But I think there's that fear there of, I suppose it's that imposter syndrome a little bit, isn't it? Being called out, being found out that you haven't got the particular skill maybe, or don't quite know where to start with this, or don't really understand or know how to actually have that conversation with someone. How would you deliver, not bad, well, it is bad news, but how would you deliver bad news to a customer with that fear in your heart that it's going to end up with a 1-star Google review, or being told that you don't know what you're doing by the customer, or, you know, being ridiculed by the customer because you can't finish the dog and stuff like that?
Gosh, so I think for me, it's about staying in that space of discovery. It's
Mm.
about talking to someone as a friend, and it's about co-creating what good looks like. So what is it you want to achieve with your dog? Is that possible for that breed?
Mm.
It's not, I think it sounds like there's a lot of in that description there, that catastrophizing. They're going to think I
Mm.
don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get a 1-star review. It's all going to be awful. If you're pretending everything's fine when it isn't, if you're over promising, then that's much more likely than being honest and saying, well, what you want to achieve with your dog isn't going to happen. Um, just with the way that the quality of their coat at the moment and all the rest of it, that might be something we need to work up towards. I think it's also really helpful, um, to be really clear. So if you've got somebody who wants, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like the most difficult hair, a poodle, let's say, and they want some kind of crazy poodle, dyed pink, bows in it, bedazzled bits in the middle, and that's not what you do. I think there is absolutely nothing wrong in saying, do you know what? That's not what I do.
Mm.
Yeah, that's not my specialism. I can do this for you. If you want all of that, then you need to look for a specialist groomer. I belong to a group. I'd
Yeah.
ask and see if I can find someone and refer them to you, and you might need to travel. So actually not knowing how to do something because it's not in your specialism, I don't think is a bad thing. And actually being clear about who you are and what you're great at is a really great thing, because then you're going to get more and more customers coming who love what you do, and what you do is brilliant for them.
Yeah, and our business, we do great pet trims. That is what we do. We don't do like the flared trousers, the Asian fusion kind of stuff. That's just not what we do. We don't do hand stripping. My wife's never been interested in it, so we send them elsewhere. We don't do particular breeds. And like you said, we just say, sorry, we don't accommodate those dogs in our salon.
Yeah.
Because I suppose it's that saying no again, isn't it? It's that ability to be able to say no and be confident in saying no, because we're people pleasers and we're fearful about what people say. And people do leave one-star reviews for not offering appointments to them and stuff like that. But that is only one person's opinion. However, the trouble, I suppose we build a lot of trouble up for ourselves by stepping outside of our boundaries. And
Yeah, and I think if as well, you need to be true to yourself, and you need to be kind. So if somebody comes to you and they say, can you dye my dog's hair red and give them like a mohawk, and I want this and that, and you're thinking, sweet Jesus, no, never. I've no idea how to do that. That's not my thing. I disagree with it. If you're like, no, 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 back, then that is going to make the person feel judged. Whereas you can say, wow, that sounds like the most amazing haircut. And it is something that is only done by specialist groomers. My specialism is X, Y, and Z, because remember, you're an expert, and that's what I offer here. If you want your dog to have a bright red mohawk, then that is going to require a specialist groomer. I'm very happy to take your number and to ask around and see if I can find someone for you. But it isn't something I offer, and you do it with absolutely no judgment. And think about it, if it's helpful, that imagine if you were a doctor and you are a kidney specialist, yeah? Anything to do with kidneys, you are brilliant. You are very helpful, you know everything, you've got all the medication and all the rest of it. And someone comes in with a gammy toe. Can you sort my gammy toe? You're not going to go, yeah, I'll give it a go. I mean, kidneys is really my thing, but go on then, let's have a look at it. I'll see what I can do. You would say, no, no. Oh gosh, that toe does look like it needs some work. Thank you for bringing it to me, but unfortunately, I don't do toes. I do kidneys. Let me see if I can refer you. And there's no judgment, there's no shame. The guy with the gammy toe isn't going to give the kidney guy a 1-star review. He's going to be really thankful that he's been honest and said, look, this is my specialism. This is what I do. I love what you want to do with your toe, because it definitely needs fixing, but you're going to do it over there with somebody else.
that's it. And I always call that with like I always say that's saying no but with value.
Exactly.
So you're saying no to them. You're getting your way, and you're saying no and rejecting them, but actually you're giving them value at the end of it because you're now recommending or putting them in the correct direction of where they need to go to.
Yeah. And it's also, I think about, and I'm touching my heart as I'm saying this. It's coming at people from this sense of love and kindness, and like they're a friend. So if you imagine again the gammy toe, why are you bringing that toe here? Yeah, can you not see it says kidneys above the door? Why have you brought this? That's disgusting. I don't do that. This is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just had this bad toe. And so it's also about the energy in which you communicate. And I think it's really important for people to think about, how do I feel about me? Yeah, and to remind yourself, I'm an expert, I'm great at what I do. Yeah, I have value, I matter, my boundaries are important, and I deliver great service to my customers with love and kindness. So when people come and they're asking for something you don't do, you just send them away with that love and kindness. It's not about you, it's not a weakness in you, it's just that that's not what you do.
Yeah, and I love this, and I always find, obviously, working with brand new pet groomers, when I get to work with them, this is so much easier. And I think, I've only been around for 5 years, so I'd love to look back at some of the businesses I've worked with in 5 years, 10 years time to see how they feel about their business, because you get quite a lot of pet groomers that are 5, 10, 15 years in, and they are sort of like burnt out by by our customers and expectations and business in general. But if we can get this right from the very beginning, our values, our boundaries, our communication style, leadership within the business, then we're going to have a much happier business owner, aren't we?
And a happier business owner creates happy customers. I used to work in customer service, customer experience, and one of the books that really shook up my thinking and transformed the way that I worked was I think it was called something like Happy Employees, Happy Customer. And it was all about yourself and your employees first. And that if you look after you, so that you're coming to work in this great frame of mind, your customers will then be happy. So if you are feeling burnt out and resentful, you will be coming at every conversation with that elevated cortisol, that spikiness, that mistrust, that frustration that your customers will feel. And they won't think, oh my gosh, this poor person, they must be finding work really difficult. They will just think it's all about them and take it personally. They don't like me, they don't like my dog, I've done something wrong. And some people will kind of cower back, and other people will give you that same spiky energy back. So you end up with all of my customers are horrible. And it's just because they're reacting to that energy.
And we get this quite a lot in the groups, and I get it from clients that say like, yeah, I've had one this morning where we've been helping a client who has a particular person in a diary that I sort of said, did I give you joy when you see them, or did I give you meh when you see them in the diary? And they're like, it's definitely meh. I really don't want to work with them anymore. What do I do about it? And it's like, well, it's time to release them, isn't it? It's time to release them from your business. And I suppose in a way, um, we are scared of letting them go from our business, but sometimes the customers might be not scared. I don't know if scared is the word, but they might not know how to release themselves from their business. And so you've got this like you're butting heads together where the groomer doesn't like what they're doing and the owner doesn't quite like the groomer and what they're doing, but no one's brave enough or showing the leadership to say actually our relationship's done and it's time to move on.
And that's where that sense of discovery and those questions like what would make this groom a 10 out of 10 for you,
Mm.
because then you could say I never feel quite like, I don't know, the groom is right or it's quite what I want.
Mhm.
And then you can explain maybe what it is that you're struggling with, and the customer can then talk about what it is that they want, and then you can have that conversation where it's like, oh well, now that makes sense to me because that's not really what I do. Mrs. Tibbings down the road does that better. There you go, that might be a better thing for you. Or it could be where I'm the nightmare customer, and I didn't know there was I thought the reason why Pip didn't like his muzzle brushed was because that was just him. It was actually if I held the dog like this and brushed him like that, it would solve the problem. So I think if you can go into that, somebody's dog, somebody's custom gives you that, ugh, not them again sort of feeling. Actually be curious. What is it? What can we understand together? How can we co-create a really great experience? And to be open to the fact that that great experience might be making a few shifts for you, or it could be about signposting them elsewhere.
And then that creates although again, it sounds counterintuitive, I suppose, losing customers, asking them to leave, I'm losing money here. I'm getting rid of customers. Right? And we've been through a few months where I've sort of said to Emma, like, can you, how many more customers are you going to bin this month? We've been turning them away where, again, we've learned this over the 22 years that we've been in business. We've learned that, if we don't have these clear boundaries, we have unhappy business, unhappy owner, and unhappy customers. So we have shed customers over the last few years. We've actually asked them to leave, and it's empowering in a way, and it builds a better business. So I'm a great believer that your business has to work for you and you've got to enjoy what you're doing. So why are we working with these people that don't fit with our values and our beliefs and give us the yay in our diaries?
I mean, we had one groomer who said with Pip that he was too big for her to manage, because he was an incredibly big dog. He was a bit unruly, and he was so restless on the table and so uncomfortable that he was just too difficult for her to manage on her own with the
Mm.
equipment she had. And we were like, fair enough. But what they did was they didn't make me feel bad. So I didn't feel shame about that. It was just data,
Mm.
just information. And also they signposted some other options. So we weren't then left thinking, oh my gosh, what do we do? Because the only person we know is you. Where do we go?
Yeah.
And like one groomer had told you we've been through a lot of groomers, um, had some problems with her wrist. And so she then wasn't able to cope with some of the work because it was very physical,
Mm.
and that's like a really nice, clear understanding about what it is that makes our dog no longer ideal for them.
And we talk about the energy, so I suppose it's probably a good idea to actually, if you're going to have these difficult conversations, maybe wait until you're in the right. Well, and you might not ever be in the right place to have them because they're fearful and they create a lot of stress, don't they? But at least wait until maybe do them in the morning rather than like having the conversation at the end of the day where you're late to picking up the kids and you're knackered from your day's grooming.
I think that, so. In terms of energy, I think there are a couple of things. One, don't book people back to back. Give yourself break time so you can recalibrate and sort of shake off the energy from one person into the next. Do things that are going to make you feel nice, good about yourself. And you're right, then I think the energy that you need to be in is to talk to someone as though they are a friend. So if this person annoys you, or you've created a whole story about them and how annoying they are, to then imagine them instead as being this lovely human being who's doing the very best they can, and then come at the conversation from there, because it's that intent and it's that connectedness that will make the difference in the conversation.
Awesome. And one thing I wanted to sort of touch on as well, you have a saying where you co-create agreement and understanding. How do we go about that?
So that's asking open questions like, what would make this a 10 out of 10 for you? It's talking about how important it is that your customers are happy, the dogs are happy. So, what do you need? What does that look like? So, you're then asking people, and it's also using those tools like empathetic listening, where you're then playing back people's exact language so that they can hear that you've heard them, and you then dig underneath. And what do you mean by that? So when I trained with Judith Glazer, who did this conversation intelligence, she sort of talked about a word. So let's say cut, a short trim that has a word, and underneath it has lots of layers of meaning.
Mm,
Um, Looking or grooming your dog in between sessions, that's got loads of assumptions to it. So let's dive underneath and let's talk about exactly what that means,
yeah.
because we work so much on expectations and on assumptions, and we think people understand what we're saying, but they don't. They don't know. Nobody else lives inside your head, and the words you use have so much clarity to you, but they don't necessarily have that shared understanding with others.
And I suppose some people might be asking at the moment because a lot of pet groomers again don't like to talk to people. They prefer using text messages and emails and stuff like that. They might be saying, well, can I do this, but can I do this via text message, or is this quite an important part of the communication to do it face to face, voice to voice sort of thing? Don't know if that's the right way to say it. Face to
I,
face.
I think you do need to have a more face-to-face conversation to establish how things work.
Mm,
And so if you have a conversation at the start, they've got some information that they have there, and then you could carry on with text. But if there's a problem or an issue, I think having that opportunity to chat to people is really important. And actually, why wouldn't you want, when you're handing your dog over to the owner, not to have a little, a little moment of connection? Because I think so there was a guy called John Gottman that looked at communication and how to communicate effectively, and he talked about bids for connection. And so quite often people will make a bid to communicate with you, which might be an or looking at you, or I don't know, talking about the weather, or saying something random about golf or boats or football or dinner or who knows what customers are saying, but actually what they're doing is they're making a bid to you to connect and to build that relationship with you.
Mm.
So if you're like, I'm not going to speak to the human, I'm just going to send you a text later, you're pushing away those bids for connection and you're not building that again, how you make people feel, because people want to feel good, supported, safe, trusted, like they can ask you questions. And if you're never there, how can
No,
they do that?
that's it. And many, I ask this question a lot with my clients, like who's actually speaking to the people on the phone, and many of them report, better customers, higher prices, better experience with the customers. So we understand that. It's just some of the pushback that I get within the community is like, well, and actually one of the things I get quite a lot is actually people saying, well, they started the conversation with text message, so that's how they want to be communicated with. But I just thought about what you were saying earlier about the nail lady. Do we? No, they've yes, they've started this conversation with a message, but is there any other way that they could start that conversation with you due to your marketing and the messages that you put out? Quite often we have contact forms, DMs on Messenger, but does that actually mean that that's how they want to be communicated with?
And you could have the best way to communicate with me is by X. If
Mm,
you want to book, do Y. If you want to talk about your dog's needs, do Z. Do you know what I mean? Just tell the customer what you
mm,
want
mm.
because we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very simple, isn't it, at times? But we
Yeah,
overthink it.
just tell them. Just tell them. And if you're uncomfortable about talking to a customer, then I think just getting back into that mindset of see them as a friend,
Mm.
co-create a shared great experience for the customer and the dog.
I mean, this comes all the way back to, a whole new topic around the imposter syndrome and stuff like that, which we've dealt with ourselves. And that was one of my issues, wasn't it? Talking on the phone
Yeah.
and disturbing people's day because they don't want to talk to me and stuff like that. So, uh,
But then you could have a when would be a good time to call.
yeah, yeah. So you're inviting the answers to your questions that are going round and round in your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just one thing to wrap up. Is another big issue that we struggle with is rebooking the people in for their next appointment, and some people will just say, will you drop me a message when you want to book in again? They put it into the customer's sort of responsibility. But we know if we can rebook our customers more often, the dogs have a better experience because they don't come in matted, and actually our we don't have to find so many new customers, so our revenue is higher as well. So it's a win-win, isn't it, for everyone?
Mhm.
How
So,
how can we change that language? Like,
yeah, so what I do with my coaching clients is at the end of the session, I will say, well, when should we book in? And I will actually do it there and then in the session.
mm,
Because then it's done. I don't need to remember to do it. It's all organized. And then we talk about the cadence that we need, whether it's going to be 2 weeks or a month or 6 weeks or whatever. So I would encourage booking it there and then. I would also think about, again, from the customer's perspective, that's another thing to think about. So, my life is chaos. So I've got a crazy dog, two adopted children, trying to run a business, and actually remembering that when I remember the dog needs his haircut is when he then starts looking a mess. But
mm.
then you're ringing a groomer, he's busy, so it's a bit further on. Whereas if it had just been done right, okay, so there we go. Pip's all lovely. Let's come back in X. I'm free. Da 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 da. Let's look in your diary. It's booked in. It's done. I don't need to think about it. It's the customer, and you've already got the client booked in.
It's good customer service, isn't it? And I sometimes
Yeah.
think about coming from a place of assumption and book them in the diary and say, I've made your appointment for X. Let me know if you can't make it. It was kind of like turn it around.
Well, yeah, and I guess it depends on the customer, doesn't it? Because for me, my diary is all over the place. So if you were going to book for me, the chances of that being a good time is probably zero.
Mm.
Whereas actually, again, having a conversation with the customer to say, let's book you in, let's have a look. Teddy comes in every 7 weeks. So 7 weeks time, you prefer Tuesdays, you like mornings. Here's the next Tuesday morning. Let's get Teddy booked in.
Mm.
Just makes it super easy. And
Yeah.
if the customer is like, you can have that conversation about leaving it longer, wanting to do it sooner, where the holidays are.
Well, it's all about communicating, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's communicating with the assumption, yeah, that you are helping your friend organize their dog. So why wouldn't they say yes?
Mm.
Whereas I think sometimes that reluctance to ask and to book is because you've got all this story going on inside of your head. Your own judgment is stopping you from having that conversation. Whereas it should be really easy. And it's something you could do as soon as you finish listening to this. The next customer, right? When should we book in the next session?
Well, I mean, that's a whole new podcast, isn't it? It probably comes under your becoming unshakable
Mm,
talk that you do about how to stay calm, clear, and consistent under pressure. So
yep.
that's a whole new podcast episode, isn't it? Really, I think the key learning from this really is obviously communication, talking, and talking face to face. Obviously, you can pick up so much more, can't you? And you can read a text message, an email in lots of different ways, depending on how good your day's been or how rubbish your day's been. You can read that same message in different ways, but I suppose asking open questions, slowing things down, and having that emotional connection and intelligence with them to get what you want from that
Hmm.
conversation as well, isn't it? Um, and then being honest, having clear boundaries, that's so
Yeah.
important, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think with that thing about boundaries, if people are doing what you don't want them to do, and you're not um having a kind conversation about that, you're actually saying what they're doing is okay.
Hmm.
And that's not them, that's a you thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I've often wanted to do a podcast called "It's Not Them, It's Us."
Yeah.
Because quite often, and it's the same for employees as well, and I'm sure you help people around communication with employees. It's quite often we get frustration around employees because they're not doing what we've been asked or they're not doing it as well as we want them to do. But the question I always ask is like, when did you last tell them?
Mm,
When did you explain this? Where is it written down for them to research?
mm.
What was the onboarding like? What was their first week like with you? Did you just point them at the bath and say, there you go, pump the shampoo in there and get on with it? Or did you have like a whole training onboarding experience?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What are you allowing? Because whatever you allow is what you get.
yeah. So there's a lot of self-reflection on there, isn't there? And
Mm.
critical thinking about what have we done and how can we improve what we've done to have better results. Awesome. Well, Amanda, it's been fantastic talking to you. It's a real eye opener, and I'm sure people will have taken loads from this. How can people connect with you if they want to speak to you, or have you got any free resources that they can look at?
Ooh, so I'm mostly on LinkedIn, which I don't think is a particularly relevant place for people.
Oh, I've got
Um,
rumors on LinkedIn. They do hang out there.
Oh, right, excellent. Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn, Amanda Cookson. And in terms of resources, some of the things that I've been talking about um, are summarized in some of the articles and things that I've written on our website, Northern Value Creators. So there's loads of stuff on there that I think are really useful for going to look at when you're thinking about improved communication.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm sure we're going to have part two as well, all around confidence and under pressure. Becoming unshakable. That's the next one. That's our part.
Excellent. Oh, good. Well, I'll look forward to that. And I'm always happy as well, if people wanted a masterclass and something that then helps them take their conversations and change them. So I often think about conversations that spark cortisol as being those red conversations and move them into green conversations and how to do that and look at particular scripts and phrases so that you fire drill those so you know exactly what you're going to say and how you're going to say it to make having those open discovery conversations easier.
Excellent. And remember, everyone, you are all technical experts.
You are, absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks for your time today, and I'll see you soon.
Pleasure.